Yeah, good morning. I'm Martin Geissler. You can join the conversation as ever this morning. Just use the hashtag BBC Sunday Show on social media. And please do. We always enjoy hearing your thoughts. Right then, this week, Humza Yousaf revealed how he intends to govern Scotland for the next 3 years. You might well have missed it because on the same day, just before the First Minister's expected announcement, Police Scotland arrested the SNP's now former Treasurer, Colin Beattie. He was later released without charge. It was all part, of course, of the ongoing investigation into the party's finances, and it pretty much stole all the headlines. So, just in case you did miss it, Mr Yousaf's vision for Scotland is based on 3 core missions: to tackle poverty, to build a fair, green and growing economy, and to improve public services. Crucially, he made it clear that all of those things are dependent on a thriving business sector here. Other items of note in the speech: the controversial deposit return scheme is going to be delayed until next year. A proposed ban on alcohol advertising will now go back to the drawing board. And we're rejoining 2 international school league tables in order to more accurately compare Scotland's education performance. Well, unfortunately, the First Minister wasn't available to talk to us about his vision for Scotland this morning, nor was his deputy, nor was anyone else in the Scottish Government, in fact. But I am pleased to say I'm joined in the studio now by the former Cabinet Secretary and current Deputy Leader of the SNP, Keith Brown. Good morning, Mr Brown.
Good morning.
Thank you for being with us. Welcome to the programme. Humza Yousaf was meant to be the continuity candidate, wasn't he? He campaigned on that basis. This is not continuity. This is, in his own words, a fresh start. What's happened?
Well, first of all, you have to understand the context in which he delivered that statement. First of all, we have a UK government, not often examined on this programme, I have to say, but she's now responsible for a national debt of £2.5 trillion. We have the worst drop in living standards and living memory. We have food inflation at 17.5%. So what Humza Yousaf was doing was responding to that terrible set of circumstances from a Tory government now 14 years into austerity, and try to make sure that people have equality, opportunity, and that we can try and rebuild our communities in the face of that cost of living crisis.
Two things. Firstly, we do hold the Tory government to account as often as we possibly can on this programme, as often as the government will come on. We certainly hold the Scottish Tories to account, and we will be doing so again in a minute. Secondly, he knew about all that stuff when he was campaigning to become the leader.
Of course he did, and I think he's responded and listened to what people have said. The engagement that's happened with businesses already has shown changes, as you've mentioned, in relation to the deposit return scheme. That's what people want, a listening government that will take action on the concerns of people. That's been true of individuals, with some of the proposals around increasing the child payment. It's been true of businesses, which you've seen a very positive reaction from stakeholders. That's exactly what you want from the First Minister. Was there too much distance between your party and the business community previously? Well, I think we have had very difficult circumstances, and making sure you have the engagement right. It's a very complex, I've done this job in the past, a very complex series of engagements that we have, and we have to cut through that and make sure we listen directly to especially small businesses, which are the backbone of the economy. So I'm very pleased that's one of the first things that Humza's done in relation to the new drive from the new First Minister. And you hadn't, the previous First Minister hadn't I think it's always been a problematic relationship. We've seen very acute problems within the business sector, how they're represented, the CBI, for example, in the last week or two. But it is something they have to continually work at, and I think it's very important. You've made the point in your opening introduction that we have to have the business connection right to get a thriving economy, and I think he's shown that with his first steps in government. It doesn't have to be a complex relationship, does it? I mean, the business community were just screaming out for years, listen to us, and you weren't. Well, it is a complex relationship. If you look at the number of business organisations which represent business, different sectors of business, and also I think it's true to say we have to make sure that that access into government has a fixed point whereby they can make their representations known to the government, and then it spreads out within government. So it is a complex relationship, and I'm very pleased about the initial start from Humza. That's the distance between you and business. Is there too much distance as well between you and the rest of the country? There are really growing concerns and criticisms in the Highlands, in the Islands, in the North East, up the West Coast now, with this new highly protected marine areas proposal, that you're actually quite a metropolitan party now and you're ignoring the old heartlands. Would that be fair? Absolutely not. We've had discussions about, for example, the A9 or the Borders Railway, where we are the government that's taken... You don't even know when you're going to begin. Well, we are the party that's done more on the A9 than any other party. That seems to be lost in the discussion. You don't know when it's going to finish. The point. So if you look look at the borders, for example, the other side of the country, the first party to build the biggest new railway in the UK in over 100 years in the Borders Railway. So we have taken on these issues. Of course, there are other issues coming forward around fishing and so on, which are often supported by all the parties in Holrood, but we have to make sure we listen to communities. And Humza said that during the course of his speech. He will listen to those concerns, just as he's done over the deposit return scheme, and take those on board.
Do you think this HPMA, the Highly Protected Marine Areas thing, will go ahead?
Well, he has said he'll listen. I'm not in the government now, so the government will have to listen. He said he will do that. And I can tell you there are people within the SNP group in the Scottish Parliament who are raising these concerns as well. So I think that's what people do want to see, a listening government. And you say, are we out of touch? Well, I've been out on the doorsteps in Rutherglen, and I can tell you, people currently on fixed incomes and pensions absolutely struggling to deal with things like a 17.5% increase in the cost of food. These are the issues which people are coming to the government with, and I think Humza's responded to that in his first statement.
What are you hearing in Rutherglen? Because it's a tough battle for you, that, if it comes to it, isn't it?
Well, what I'm really keen to say is that the SNP, the activists within the SNP, and I've seen this in my own constituency as well, are determined to get involved in this and determined to drive forward the agenda of the SNP. We've seen upticks in membership across the country. We've seen upticks in terms of donations.
You've seen growing membership?
Yes, across reports across the country.
How many?
Well, I don't have all the figures from all the different parts of the country yet.
Yeah.
And I would also just balance that by saying, yes, we have lost members as well, but the balance is showing an increase in membership. But on the doors in Rutherglen, what people were talking about were those issues. And you would think, given the newspapers and all the coverage there's been over internal challenges within the SNP, that would have come up time and again. It just did not. It's the real issues that affect people, especially those on fixed incomes.
I'm interested in this notion of membership growing. Since when? Over what period has it grown?
Over the last 2 or 3 months. I don't know if you look at social media, you'll see reports from different branches and constituencies throughout the SNP reporting increases in membership.
Well, what would you put that down to, given all the problems that you've had?
I think part of it is because there are challenges. The SNP has been in the headlines to a great extent, and sometimes people respond to that. There's also this real determination to make sure that the case of the SNP, which of course is independence for Scotland, is forcefully prosecuted. It's really quite heartening to see the response.
Where are we on that now, on independence? Is it still a short-term vision, or has it become the long game? I mean, Mike Russell said it can't be achieved right now. Is he right?
Well, Humza's made clear there'll be a conference specifically to decide on the way forward for independence, and he wants to hear from members. And I can tell you that the membership want to have their say. Of course, the original proposal was for a de facto referendum, something which I still support. I supported it before. But that will be decided by the membership, and that will happen over the course of the next few months.
Do you think it's the long-term vision rather than a short-term goal?
Well, I think it's down to the SNP membership to say how they want the party to take it forward. And of course, there is a wider Yes movement. But from my point of view, we have to give the membership the chance to come forward and say what they think the best way forward is. Right,
let's look at the party problems, if we can, at the moment. A couple of front pages this morning. Sunday Mail, SNP cops hunt for what they're describing as burner phones. Mail on Sunday, SNP fraud police in hunt for phones, SIM cards. It's just not stopping all this, is it?
I don't know who the SNP cops are, or the SNP fraud cops. I don't know who these people are they're talking about. And I'm not going to refer to an ongoing live police inquiry. And I'm very surprised about the extent to which it is discussed, because it can prejudice the outcome of that inquiry. What I would say is, of course, the SNP have internal challenges. And going back to your original point about Humza, what he has done right away is to initiate a governance and transparency review. We've just seen the replacement of the National Treasurer. So action has been taken to make sure that we meet these internal challenges. And in the meantime, we are one of the most transparent parties in the UK. You will have a very good idea of what the SNP's membership... Well, do you know what the membership number is for the Scottish Tories or the Labour Party in Scotland? Have you any idea what it is?
Well, they haven't misled us on it.
They haven't told you what it is.
They haven't told us, but they haven't misled us. You can't say you're transparent when you've been misleading the public.
The SNP have told you.
You're the party that didn't show its own treasurer its books.
The SNP have told you what the membership is. You can't just gloss over the fact they haven't misled us. They haven't told you. We are a more transparent, more successful party than any other party in Scotland. We have to increase that transparency. It's my ambition, and I know that it's Humza's, to make sure we are the most transparent party in Scotland, and that we set the standard for transparency and shame the other parties.
These words must stick in your throat a little bit. because you wrote a big review on transparency with a whole series of proposals that are actually quite visionary. But it was prophesying what was about to happen, it seems, to the party when you wrote this a couple of years ago. You demanded a monthly written summary of income and expenditure. You said the police investigation into alleged missing funds would inevitably raise questions about the SNP's financial governance, highlight the need to restore confidence in our procedures. It's imperative the workings and decisions of the party are transparent and accessible. What happened to that report?
Well, first of all, there's many other people involved in that, not just myself. But it went to the parties.
Wasn't it?
That is true, and I stand by it. And the party's NEC considered that and decided to go a different route, putting it onto a smaller subcommittee which would look at some of these issues. I regret the fact that wasn't taken forward, but I am very pleased that on coming into office, Humza's immediately reinitiated a governance and transparency review and has said it will rely upon, take its lead from the work that we did previously. So that's a good thing to do, and it's important that all parties continue to look at their governance and transparency.
Who binned it?
It went to the NEC, as I've said, and of course it had some contentious elements to that, including reducing the size of the NEC, and it was to be taken on further forward. It's not gone at the rate I think it should have gone. It's not done some of the things I think it should have done, but I'm very pleased that Humza's now grasped this and said the party will take this forward.
What was wrong with the way the party was being run? You investigated it, you came up with a series of recommendations. What were the problems that you identified?
Perhaps the most glaring issue for me was the fact that a party which I've been in for 30 years, which had a membership never going above 15 or 20,000, suddenly had 100,000 plus members. And we did not grow the support within the party, either for office bearers or for members, to the extent that we should have done to meet that challenge. And I think many of the issues stem from that particular fact.
How much trouble is the party in just now?
I think the party, despite what we see in the newspapers, is in very good heart. I went to, as I say, Rutherglen. I'm going to constituency meetings around the country. We've got a really determined, I mean, they do feel the SNP is a bit under the cosh just now, not unreasonably, and they want to respond to that. So the party, the activists, the members are in very good heart. They want to see action taken by the party to rebuild trust, both within the party and with the people of Scotland, but they're in very good heart.
Was the party run by a small group of people? Was that damaging? Was there too much secrecy? I mean, that's what you investigated, right? That was the allegation. It was often denied. Now can we just front it up and say that actually was a problem?
My analysis of it was, especially during the period of COVID, when we had Zoom meetings for an NEC which comprised 40 plus people, where not everybody could get the questions asked, far less answered. I think that caused issues at that stage, and we have to move beyond that, and we have moved beyond that already. And I'm very encouraged by the direction that Humza is now taking on these issues.
Yeah, I mean, people have been reading the headlines, been watching. I mean, the police investigation is one thing, right? But there's a lot of stuff that we do know because we've seen it, people have been discussing it, it's been accepted. The membership numbers, the misleading of the public over the membership numbers, senior party figures being told not to ask about the finances. You were just touching on that there. The treasurer not being shown the books. I mean, there's stuff about this motorhome. People will be asking, if we can't trust the SNP to run itself, why should we trust it to run the country?
Can I say you've touched upon things which are directly related to a live police inquiry, and I'm not going to comment on those. I would say as well that we've had 2 people arrested, as you've acknowledged. We've also had the Prime Minister convicted by the police. We've had the former Tory Prime Minister convicted by the police. We've this week had the Deputy Prime Minister of the UK have to leave because of bullying allegations. Nobody in the SNP has yet been charged. There's not been any suggestion of any particular individual doing something unlawful. So let's let the police do their work. And we have said from the start we'll cooperate with that inquiry, and let's see what it comes up with.
Are you concerned about the impact it might have should Nicola Sturgeon be arrested this week? There's been speculation she may be the next.
I don't know how many ways I can put this. I am not going to comment on a live police inquiry.
All right. OK, listen, Keith Brown, Deputy Leader of the SNP, thank you very much indeed for being with us this morning. Now, of course, the SNP are in government with the Scottish Greens, and to some degree at least they have to balance their vision accordingly. And I'm pleased to say I'm joined now from Edinburgh by the Scottish Greens Education, Finance and Constitution spokesperson Ross Greer. Morning, Mr Greer, how are you?
I'm good, Martin. How are you?
Good. Thanks very much indeed for being with us this morning. So, we were talking to Keith Brown at the start of that interview about Humza Yousaf's vision for the next 3 years, the kind of programme for government, as it were. What did you make of it? Is it green enough for you?
The Scottish Greens and Government were really proud to contribute towards that prospectus, and as you said, it has overarching objectives of lifting people out of poverty, primarily children, a laser-like focus on lifting children out of poverty, and on tackling the climate emergency. So if I was to highlight one policy that I'm really proud of, because it's a green policy that's now being delivered, it's removing peak time rail fares, so making it easier and cheaper, more affordable for people to travel by public transport. The Greens have already delivered that for young people with our free bus travel scheme. More than 50 million free journeys have been taken, and the First Minister announced this past Tuesday that our policy of removing peak time rail fares will be delivered from this coming October. So those are examples of how we are delivering for people and the planet. Greens in Government helping people through this cost of living crisis by reducing the cost of transport and obviously getting more cars off the road.
All right, there are a couple of green policies that are in a bit of trouble now at the moment, aren't there, as well? The deposit return scheme has been altered, it's been delayed. Some companies now are not going to be liable to it. It's a big change from the "we're ready to go, this is definitely happening" that Lorna Slater was pronouncing just a few short weeks ago, isn't it?
It's worth being really clear about the primary reason that the deposit return scheme has been delayed. It's because after Brexit, the UK government, the Tories, gave themselves a new power of veto over the Scottish Parliament called the Internal Market Act. Because of the Internal Market Act, the Scottish government now needs the UK government's authorisation for this scheme to go ahead, despite it being in a clearly devolved area, and they've refused to give us that.
So why don't you just wait till the UK government brings in its own scheme and then join that scheme, or bring in your scheme in conjunction with theirs, which would remove virtually all of the stumbling blocks that small companies are saying they face?
The planet can't wait for a UK Tory government that can't get its act together on anything, that's caused an economic meltdown, to take action on this. The Tories have been promising a deposit return scheme for years and not delivering on it. We've pressed ahead with actually delivering ours. Their proposals don't include glass, but Scotland's proposals do, like pretty much all of the world-leading deposit return schemes across this planet. We can't afford to wait years, a potentially indeterminate amount of time.
They're talking about the end of next year, aren't they, the Tory government?
We're talking at least 2 years before they deliver England's deposit return scheme. But why? Why should Scotland have to wait for England on this? The people of Scotland elected a parliament. The people of Scotland chose to have a parliament.
Sorry, Mr. Greer, I don't mean to interrupt you again, but companies are telling us they may well go to the wall if you don't wait. That's why you should wait.
If the UK government had cooperated with us instead of trying to sabotage this scheme over the last 2 years, we would have had clarity months ago on issues like VAT rather than the length of time it took to get clarity on that. Let's be completely clear here. The Tories have actively tried to sabotage this scheme, like they're sabotaging a whole range of Scottish Government initiatives using a power of veto that they gave themselves after a Brexit Scotland didn't vote for. This is a government Scotland didn't vote for, using a Brexit result it didn't vote for to veto decisions made by Scotland's elected Parliament that the people obviously did vote for. This is outrageous.
Is it less easy for you now to be in government with the SNP than it was a couple of months ago? There are increasingly voluble voices and groups within that party now that are clearly not enjoying the Butte House Agreement, and I suspect many of them think it should probably come to an end. Fergus Ewing, for example, last week described you as wine bar revolutionaries. What do you say to him?
To be fair to Fergus, I think he knows a lot more about wine bars than I do, but the man's so far on the back benches you would need a flashlight to find him. 95% of SNP members voted for the Butte House Agreement, and we can see from public polling that the Scottish Greens are more popular than we were 2 years ago when we entered government. That's because we're actually delivering things people want and need. It's the Greens in government who delivered a rent freeze keeping tenants in their homes over the winter. We've delivered an eviction ban that we've extended across the summer into this year as well. We delivered under 22 free bus travel. We're now about to remove peak time rail fares. It's Greens in government who are delivering what people really need right now to help them through the cost of living crisis and to take action on the climate emergency that we all recognise needs to be our top priority.
Part of the Butte House Agreement, a kind of red line issue in the Butte House Agreement, were these HPMAs, highly protected marine areas, that I was talking to Keith Brown about a couple of minutes ago. He was saying Humza Yousaf will have to review that. There's a lot of angst in much of the SNP ranks about this. Huge concern up the west coast, through the Highlands, down through the fishing communities of the northeast about the impact it might have, and on the islands too. Is that a red line area? If these don't go ahead, is that the end of the Butte House Agreement?
Look, there's a lot of misinformation about highly protected marine areas out there at the moment. I'm a West Coast MSP, so I know, for example, the no-take zone in Lunlash Bay in the south of Arran was initially met by huge amounts of scepticism and hostility even, but within 5 years it had had all the successes that we expected it would take at least 10 years for. And a lot of the local fishermen there will now be some of the staunchest defenders of that no-take zone.
But the criticism is there's been no consultation on this, though, isn't it?
But Martin, that's wrong, because all that's happening is a consultation. How can you possibly say that the criticism is based on the fact there's no consultation when what people are criticising is a consultation?
Well, listen, let me ask you one last question. Let me ask you well, because it's the criticism that I've heard from a lot of island communities.
But they're criticising a consultation to say there's no consultation. How does that possibly make any sense? We are listening to communities here. That's why there's a consultation going on.
Listen, just before I let you go, Ross Greer, let me ask you one final question. This trouble the SNP finds itself in, do you think you can capitalise on that, pick up a lot of pro-independence votes that they may be losing?
Well, the Scottish Greens are always there for progressive pro-independence voters, for people who want a fairer, greener vision of Scotland. I'm not going to exploit something as serious as a police investigation into another political party at the moment, though. But what you can see from what Greens are delivering in government and the polling that we're seeing is that more and more people recognise that we not only have the ideas, but we have the competence, the ability to deliver those ideas to help people and to help the planet.
All right, Ross Greer, many thanks indeed, as ever, for being with us on the Sunday Show this morning.